Good morning, Year 11. Welcome to the extended assembly this morning, talking about teacher assessed grades for this summer. Hopefully this gives you some more answers to your questions and helps you feel a little bit more reassured about the whole process. There's going to be a lot of information to get through this morning, so my top tip of advice is just patience. Listen to everything that everybody's got to say, and we promise there'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions. As it says on this slide, we're going to be sharing more details with you about how your teacher assessed grades will be calculated at this school and what it will look like for you. Mr. Coates and Mrs. Bullers, they'll explain the process to you. So again, please just be patient with them. And at the end of the video, I'm going to explain how you can ask us any questions and how we're going to respond to these.
Hello everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Mr. Coates. I'm one of the senior management team at Notre Dame. I'm going to run through a short number of slides with you. I want to go through with you the instructions we've been given by the Department for Education as to how we should be arriving at teacher assessed grades. I'm going to talk about the way in which we at Notre Dame are responding to those instructions from the Department for Education and the process by which we're going to arrive at the teacher assessed grades, the information we're going to take into account. And I also want to talk to you about some reassurance that we hope we're going to be able to give you before we break up for Easter about the sort of teacher assessed grades that you as individual students are likely to be heading towards. We know there's going to be a lot of anxiety and a lot of questions about the teacher assessed grades, and what we want to do is give you the information we are able to and guidance that we're able to around the trajectory and the direction you're travelling in, just to give you as much reassurance as we're able to, and also the confidence to go on and aspire and to try and get those even higher grades, or to give us evidence that we can award even higher grades. So the slide I've got up in front of me at the moment is a summary of the direction we've been given by the Department for Education in relation to working out teacher assessed grades. So we've been asked to arrive at those by teacher judgment. We've been instructed, and we will do, each one of your teachers will make a judgment based on a broad range of evidence. We want to take into account as much evidence as we possibly can so that we are as fairly as possible recognising the knowledge, the understanding and the skills you've gained in each of your subject. Your GCSEs, your A-levels are the culmination of 2 or more years of work, and we want to be bringing as much evidence as we possibly can to arrive at a fair judgment for each and every one of you. We've been asked not to grade by an algorithm, and we won't be. So what that means is we won't be making any decisions based on the number of grade 8s we've had in particular subjects in previous years, for example. We're not going to be doing that. We are just going to be looking at the quality of work produced by students, though that will dictate the teacher assessed grades. Left-hand column there, the point is made that you'll only be assessed on what you've been taught. So if you haven't covered something in your lessons with your teacher, because COVID has cut short our ability to do that, then quite simply we won't be forming any judgment based on material you haven't covered. That wouldn't be fair. There's a very, very important point in the left column there. Your teacher will tell you what evidence is used to grade you. That's really important. You need to know and understand what work is going to count towards your teacher assessed grades. I'm going to go through that, what we're doing at a school-wide level, and then each of your subjects, each department area before Easter, we'll say a bit more about this, will be producing a detailed breakdown of the assessed work that you'll undertake between now and summer that will be contributing towards that teacher assessed grade. The middle column, the amber column there, talks about the sorts of evidence that we can use, and it's saying really we can use assessed work, we can use any work that you've done previously, but we're encouraged to look at as broad a range of evidence as possible, and we will be doing so. There's a number of subjects where there is a non-exam assessment that makes up part of the final grade. So an example might be GCSE PE, which is where the NEA, the non-examined assessment, makes up 40% of the final mark. We've been asked to use the NEAs with the correct weighting, so in PE 40%, to inform the teacher assessed grades, and we will do that. Where the non-exam assessments haven't yet been completed, departments will be working with students wherever possible to do so. Art at both, and photography at GCSE and art at A-level is slightly different than the other subjects, and that's just being flagged up on this first slide because some of what I say later won't apply to art, photography. In art and photography, your teacher assessed grade will be entirely based on the portfolio that you are producing, and you'll get opportunity, if that portfolio isn't completed, to complete it in the lesson time remaining. You will find between now and the summer, Mrs. Bullers will talk more about the formal assessments that we'll do in the summer term, but many department areas will be using question banks, grade descriptors that are and supporting materials that are provided by the exam boards. And the reason for that is simply so that we are being as fair as possible on students, that where we can, we'll use standardized mark schemes and the like. I think we've flagged this to you already, just on the top right of this slide. The results days for this summer have been brought forward, and that's so that there is more time to deal with any appeals. So the AS and A-level results are on the 10th of August, and the GCSEs have been brought forward as well, and they'll be on the 12th of August. And again, this slide, talks about some of the extra, the checks and balances are in place to protect you as students. We'll be talking about some of the internal checks and balances we're putting in place, but you also have that ultimate right to appeal your grade at the end of the day if you are not happy with it, and that's important. A couple of things that I think weren't necessary on that first slide. There's a very small number of students who are studying subjects outside of school time, but we're intending to take the exam in the sports hall in school in the summer. Those people are referred to as private candidates. There's a very small number of those people at school affected, but we will be talking to those individually to make sure you're aware of how we'll be supporting you. And just a final point before I start going into what we're doing at Notre Dame. We've been instructed by the Department of Education that it must be no easier or harder for a student to achieve a particular grade this year compared to previous years. And again, everything we're setting out to do is with this in mind, to be as fair as we possibly can to every single student in each of their subjects, and not to put anyone at either an advantage or a disadvantage over any other student. So how will we go about responding to that direction from the Department of Education as a school? We're going to adopt a consistent approach across all departments, and we're going to use 3 pieces of evidence that will contribute towards your teacher assessed grade. If you remember on a couple of slides back, we talked about using the broadest range of evidence we possibly can, and we want to recognise all the work that you have done. So we will be taking into consideration the most recent progress tracking grades we have for you. Those progress tracking grades take into account all of the work you produced up to that point. For year 11, the most recent on track for grade ranges were provided, and year 10 mid-size exam groups. The most recent on track monitoring was provided to you in November. And for year 13, the most recent on track for grade ranges were provided in January. So that will form part of the evidence that we use. We also know that you have done a lot of work since that last monitoring data point. And so we're going to report again to you in April, before we break up for Easter. We're going to put in place an additional April progress monitoring, and that will work in exactly the same way that the previous monitorings have worked. We're reporting the trajectory that we think students are on based on all of the work they've produced up to that point. And I'm going to say a little bit more about the information you can take away from the April monitoring, because it will tell you something about your teacher assessed grades. Of course, we are not yet at the end of the school year, and you need to have an opportunity to show us that you are working at a higher level than we think you might be. And by that you've got more knowledge than we think you may have. Your understanding is at a higher level than we think, or it has been previously, and that you're able to demonstrate a higher level of skill than we might have thought. And it's for that reason that we're going to put in place a scheduled programme of assessed work that will take place in lesson times during the first half of the summer term. And that's an opportunity for you to show us really how good you are. So April monitoring, we will get that to you. That will be published on the Tuesday before we break up for Easter. So that's in about 3 weeks' time. We will give you a 2-grade range for each subject, and that's telling you the trajectory based on everything you've done so far that we think you are on, the grades we think you're most likely to get had the exams, were the exams to have gone ahead. So for GCSEs, it might look like 5 to 6 or 7 to 8. For A levels, it will be things like A to B, B to C. Now that monitoring data is important to you. It's not saying what your teacher assessed grade is going to be, but it can give you a high level of reassurance as to what your teacher assessed grade might be or is likely to be, albeit that we've still got the 5 or 6 weeks after Easter for you to provide us with evidence that you're working at a higher level than we think you are. So let's think about an example, and I'm going to give it an example for a GCSE student, but the same thinking and the same logic applies for A-level students. So I want you to imagine that you've been given an on-track of 5 to 6 in April for one of your subjects. What does that really mean? What are we actually saying? Well, it's the end of April. It'll be the end of this term at the start of April, and that means there are only 6 school weeks left. So whatever trajectory you're on, there isn't much time to come off that trajectory. So what we're saying actually is we think that if the exams were to have gone ahead, the most likely thing would be that you would have got at least a grade 5, and that you stood a good chance of getting a grade 6. So you can take away from that your teacher assessed grade is likely to be at least a grade 5 for that subject. We're not saying it will be, we can't, we're not allowed to at that point because we won't have collated all the evidence, but we're saying actually it's pretty likely that your teacher assessed grade will be at least a grade 5. Now of course, were the exams to have gone ahead, you might not have got a 5 or a 6. Things might not have gone as well as you'd hoped. You might have got a 4. It might have gone really, really well, and you might have got a 7, for example. But at this stage, without any extra evidence, both you and your teacher would probably say, actually, the 4, I'm a bit disappointed, I've been a bit unlucky there. And had you come away with a 7, that would have been considered lucky. You know, you've done really, really well there. Rather than it being an accurate reflection of your knowledge, understanding and skills in that subject. Now, of course, we've still got the 5 or 6 weeks left. And so what we want you to do is have an opportunity to demonstrate that higher level of knowledge, understanding and skills. So that grade 7 is still, or 8 or 9 even, is still an opportunity that's on the table for you. What we're not doing is saying it's removed. So in this particular example, your teacher assessed grade is likely to be at least a 5. We would need consistently lower quality assessed work over that first half of the summer term for your grade to be, your teacher assessed grade to be lower than a 5, because we've got so much evidence already that you're heading for a 5 or a 6. And your teachers will be looking for further evidence from the assessed work that Mrs. Bullers will talk about in a minute, of knowledge, skills and understanding that would be consistent with grade 6 or above. So there is that opportunity to be awarded a higher grade for your teacher assessed grade, informed by the work that you've still got an opportunity to produce for us. I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Bullers this point. Thank you for listening, and as your head of year has said at the start, that there will be an opportunity for you to ask us any questions about anything that either myself or as talked about, or that Mrs. Bullers is going to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coates. So I'm going to talk to you now about the assessed work that we will be getting post-April monitoring. So basically, that is the assessed work that will be taking place over a 6-week period of time. That will start from just after our Easter holidays and go right the way up until May half term. These assessments will be taking place inside your classrooms. If you've got access arrangements, then it will be arranged so that you will have these access arrangements. That might be that the access arrangements happen within the classroom, or it might be the case if someone will come and support you and take you out of the classroom so you can fully get your access arrangement. Now, when it comes to the assessed work post-April monitoring, you will be given a schedule from each department which will look like this. The reason why we're giving you this assessment schedule is so that it's really clear to you what assessments will be taking place, so we're really transparent with you. You will know when you're being assessed, and you'll also know what you're being assessed on. All of these assessment schedules will be available on the school website, and we'll obviously let you know when they've all been uploaded. We're expecting this to happen just before the Easter holidays, so you can use that time over the Easter holidays to prepare yourself for the assessments. So let's have a look at this blank copy together. You'll see the first column just has the week numbers there, so it gives us all the way from us coming back to school right the way until May half term. At the top, it'll tell you the subject that your assessment is taking place in and the class. So just making sure we check those carefully to make sure that it is definitely your class that you're looking at. You'll see that on this blank schedule, there's an assessment down for every single week, so 6 assessments in total. As we'll talk about in a second, this might not be the case. It'll be down to each subject to decide what's most suitable for the subject. The third column will show the day in the lesson period, so you know when your assessment will take place and in which lesson it will take place. In the next column, you'll know the length of the assessment. What we're saying for the length of the assessment, so for year 13, so for our A-level students, we expect typically the assessments will be no longer than an hour and a half. That basically is just so that they can fit within that double lesson nice and easily. For GCSE students, we expect the length of assessments will be no more than about 40 minutes. This means it will be able to fit in a period, 1 hour period lesson. The last column will give you details of the assessment. This won't tell you specifically what each question will be on, but it'll give you a broad range of topics to help you in your revision. Okay, so just to help you go through that a little bit more, I've put together 3 different examples. Just at this point to make it incredibly clear, what I'm about to go through now are examples that I've basically just made up. So these are not the assessment schedules for these subjects. They'll be displayed once they've been completed by departments on the school website just before the Easter holidays. Okay, so first of all, you'll see a year 13 example here. So having a look together, you'll see that the subject is geography, and if you're in block 13A, this will be your assessment schedule. It is really important, particularly for our A-level students, that you make sure that the class is correct and that's written down. The reason why is because it might mean that for different groups at A-level, the assessments might take place at different times. As you'll see, we've got a completed one here for geography, and just looking at the first one there, you will see in week 1 on the Friday double lesson with an hour and 30-minute assessment, and your subject teacher has told you there'll be assessment on physical geography, and the assessment will be based around the topics of water and the carbon cycle, hot desert systems and landscapes, and coastal systems and landscapes. So it gives you a broad area and broad topics to help support you with your revision. Let's have a look at another example. Another example could be a Year 11 maths group. So let's see how this is different from the one before. The maths department may make the decision that there'll be no assessment taking place in the first week, hence the reason that it's blacked out. They might also make the decision, if you can have a look, the length of assessment for the first week is 40 minutes long. So it fits within that 1 hour lesson. It clearly shows on the right hand side there, the assessment will be focused on algebra skills only. You'll also see in the second week, they might decide to do 2 smaller assessments, so 2 20-minute assessments in 1 week. So each department will choose that depending on what is best for their subject. So another example, let's have a look at food and nutrition for Year 10. So Mrs. Ragg will obviously know that specification really well, and she knows a big bulk of that assessment is all based around your NEA. So therefore, because she knows she'll be focusing on the NEA, she's decided to black out the first 2 weeks. That means that she'll just do 4 assessments, which is absolutely fine. And you'll see, looking at the screen there, that she'll do 2 multiple choice quizzes, 2 longer written response questions, and it also tells you the topics that she'll be working on. You'll see that for this GCSE group, Mrs. Ragg has decided to do an hour one because they have a double lesson, so she's able to do that. And also then there's 2 20-minute assessments. So just to go over that again, all these assessment schedules will be completed by your departments, by your subject teachers. These will become available after your April monitoring, so just before the Easter holidays, and they'll be displayed on the school website. We'll let you know when they're all there. So if you want to use those, you can then download those, you can see what you're being assessed on, and then you can create your revision schedule according to that. When there is not an assessment happening, you will be in your lessons as normal. Your class teachers, unless it's really necessary to help you with your next steps, will not be teaching you any new content. You'll be using that time for the structured revision and to help support you with that learning. So it is expected that you're in lessons as normal, because obviously the assessments will happen in lessons as well. Now, once you've completed your assessments, I think it's really important for us to be transparent with you how they will be marked and moderated. There's one thing that is something called unconscious bias. So that basically means, let's say, for example, I'm marking a student's work in my GCSE maths group. Now, in that question, they might have made a little silly mistake, and I might be thinking to myself, well, I know student X, when we did that in class last week, yeah, it was just a little mistake. I know they know what they're talking about, okay? So that's something called unconscious bias. I might end up being a little bit more lenient because I know what the student can do. Now, to help support and kind of remove as much unconscious bias as we can, all students will be given a candidate number. So you will be given a specific number that's relevant to you. The only person which will know which candidate number goes to which students is yourself, and also Mrs. Payne's the exam manager. So when you do any assessments for any subjects, you will never be expected to write your name on the overview sheet. You'll always be asked to write your candidate number. Don't worry, we'll give you these on stickers so you can keep them so you won't forget them, so don't panic about that. That just helps us remove the extra layer of unconscious bias. Also, like I said before, access arrangements will be in place for each assessment. So the purpose of access arrangements is to remove that barrier. So to put people with access arrangements in the same position of people without access arrangements. And we will ensure for all assessments, you will get your access arrangements. All assessments will be collated and be stored securely in school. So once you've handed an assessment in, that will actually go in a file with your candidate number, and that will be kept. The reason for that is, obviously, I'll talk about the moderation in a second, but it also means we've got the evidence stored securely in school. So if exam boards ask for it, we'll be able to provide it with them. But also, if you decide to appeal at any point, we've got the all the assessment stuff all together, ready to go to the exam boards then as well. We will obviously undertake a moderation process. We'll do this both within the departments. That basically means I might mark a set of work, Ms. Strutman might mark my papers again, just to make sure that my marking is correct. We're also going to be working with other schools as well. This is to ensure that no student's work is marked no more or less generously than students in other schools. So it helps us monitor across schools and make sure it's fair across a range of schools, not just within our school. And finally, the exam boards have told us that they will be also taking some moderation. We're not quite sure what this looks like yet, so we're just waiting for more information on that, but exam boards will be doing some moderation as well. Okay, so just to summarise everything we've said so far, so this one page really gives us a really good overview of what's going to be happening from your perspective. So this is going to summarise everything that I've been through and also everything that Dr. Coates has been through as well. So obviously this week, so the week commencing the 8th of March, we've welcomed you back into school and we are absolutely delighted to have you back in school. And what you'll be doing is you'll be attending your normal lessons when staff will continue to support you with your learning. This will mainly involve consolidation of the prior learning, so going over past topics, and new content will not be taught unless the department thinks it's essential to support students in the next steps. If there is any new content to be taught, departments will share this information with you. So in terms of your revision and what you're doing in your class, your subject teachers are the best people to talk to if you have any questions about that. On the 30th of March, as Dr. Coates has already said, you'll be given your April monitoring. So this will show your current grade that your teacher feels that you're working towards, taking into account all the evidence they have about you since you've started the course. Also at this point, the detailed assessment schedules will be available on the school website. We'll obviously let you know exactly where you need to find those. You'll then break up for the Easter holidays and you'll have 2 weeks at home with your families, being able to celebrate the Easter. At this point, you'll obviously be able to use some of that time in order to start your revision. So using those assessment schedules, you'll be able to see, well, what assessments are coming up, maybe in the first week, the second week back, and you'll be able to prepare yourself for those. The assessment period will then start between the 19th of April and the 26th of May. Obviously, like I said before, these will take place in most times in your normal classrooms. When not completing assessments, you'll be in your normal scheduled lessons where your teachers will continue to support you with your learning. On the 28th of May, it will be a very sad day for us, and that'll be your last official day in school. Obviously, your head of year will give you further information of how we will be celebrating this momentous occasion with you. Now, an important day for people as well, obviously you'll get your results. For A-level, that will be on the 10th of August, and for GCSE, that will be on the 12th of August. That's different to normal years. I know your heads of years have already shared that with you. So that'll be a day we'll be able to come together and celebrate everything that you've done. So just to finish off then, in a moment, I'm going to pass over to your heads of years who are just going to finish everything off with you today and also tell you what you can do to ask any questions, whether that be through your form tutor or those questions to ask to us, and we'll collate all those responses and get them back to us. So over to your head of year.
Thank you for your patience. I know there's loads of information there to get through, but it's really important we give you all of it. And like we said from the start, we want to be as transparent as we possibly can so that you're empowered. But it's understandable at this point, you may have lots of questions and we want to be able to answer as many of those questions as possible. So there is going to be a link that your form tutor has now to a Microsoft form. This can be completed by form teachers on your behalf, or you can access the link and submit your own question, or your parents can submit their question. If all questions could be submitted by Monday the 15th of March, that would be brilliant, because then we can respond to the questions posed. We'll share the questions and responses of all of the questions with all students and parents, because some questions you might have right now, you might just have heard too much information to be able to process any questions at the moment. I'm sure over the week before Monday the 15th, some of those questions will start to crop up for you. I think the most important reminder that I could give to you is that your teachers are on your side and we want you to get the best grades you can. We told you that last week. That we're going to make sure you are not disadvantaged. There are lots of checks and balances in place to protect you. There's still time for all of you to improve the grades that you are awarded in the summer. And please, please, please talk to us if you are concerned or you have any worries. Thank you, Year 11. Have a lovely rest of your day.